Look, I know the title of this video is a bit hyperbolic, but it's true. For the people that have known me for a while, know that I started on FL Studio, and then I switched to Ableton Live, and then I switched back to FL Studio, and then back to Live. And the reason why I do that is not because I want to, it's because these programs, they have specific features that I really like and always make me want to go back to them. I've watched all of the dog comparisons videos on YouTube, and one phrase that you see all the time is, it doesn't matter, they're all the same. And that's not true, and it's okay to say that. Not all DAWs are the same. They're developed by different companies, different people with different goals. All phones can make calls, yeah, that's true, but some phones are better than others. I think we can all agree that, at least in some aspects, some are better than others. And today I want to talk about them. Starting with Live. This feature in itself, it's like 70% the reason why I always come back to Ableton Live. Both Ableton and FL Studio, they're always listening to what you're playing, and you can always recover stuff that you didn't record. The thing is, on Live and FL, these work really differently. On FL Studio, they have a feature called Dump Score Log, which allows you to go back up to 30 minutes. I don't know who wants to go back half an hour of MIDI data, but it allows you to. The issue with this one is that it just dumps all the MIDI data into your pattern. There's no context. What you usually have to do is dump all that MIDI, find exactly what you want, cut it, delete everything else, paste it, and find the timing that you played it on. That's a lot of work. On Ableton Live, this works differently. There's this button called Capture MIDI. Ableton is always listening, but it's not just listening to what you're playing, it's listening in context. So when I click Capture MIDI, it not only dumps all the MIDI data that I played, it captures that MIDI exactly on that context, exactly on the timing that I played it on. If I want to play a top line on top of this, I can just let this loop play a bunch of melodies, and whenever I find something that I like, I just capture MIDI, and that melody is there, recorded, exactly on the timing that I wanted, exactly on the timing that I played. This feature alone makes me want to go back to Ableton all the time. Almost makes the record button obsolete for me. I'm never recording it. Another thing that I love about Ableton is grouping. Grouping on Live is insane. You can group anything, you can group groups, you can group tracks, you can group effects, you can group effects groups inside of other groups, and it's so good. You can group multiple tracks. Whenever you group tracks, it's not only a visual thing, it not only allows you to hide all those tracks inside of the group, but it also creates the routing. So all of these tracks, they're routing, instead of going straight to the master, they're going to the group. And if I group this group with another group, let's say I want to group these two groups, I'm saying group so much, it adjusts that routing. So these tracks are going to group 2, which is going to group, and these ones are going to this group, which are going to this group. That is so useful for organization, for mixing, when you're dealing with multiple tracks of vocals or instruments. It's insane, and I love grouping on Ableton Live. You can also group effects. So if you want to group these effects, it groups them. You can create a dry chain on top of it, which is basically like a parallel chain, and it allows you to do so much. FL Studio also has groups, but it's purely visual. All of these tracks that are grouped below other tracks, they're just hiding. There's no functionality. None of these tracks are routed to this main track. And even like some simple behaviors, like I would expect that if I mute this header group track, it would mute the other tracks, but it doesn't. So you need to open the groups anyways if you want to mute or unmute them. It's just not the same. Another thing that is great on Live is working with audio. This has always been a downer on FL Studio's side. From recording, stretching, it's so easy to create points and stretch samples in audio. If I want to reverse a clip, I just select it and press a single button, just the R button, and it reverses it. There's comping, so I can just loop record, and you record all of the track lanes. Working with audio on Ableton Live is just so much easier, and I really like to deal with audio more than MIDI, and that's a big thing of why I always come back to Ableton. Another big thing on Ableton Live for me, and this is my personal opinion, is workflow. Live utilizes a more traditional workflow, which is a track-based workflow. This is the workflow that you're gonna see on Logic Pro, Cubase, Pro Tools, which each track is its own instrument, its own MIDI clip, and its own mixer track. Each track, it's not only the track itself, it's content and also the mixing. Everything is right here, and you don't need to go into multiple panels to access different stuff. FL Studio, on the other hand, uses a loop-based workflow. These tracks in here in FL Studio, they're not tracks like they traditionally are on Ableton or Logic or Pro Tools. They're just places. It doesn't matter if my kick is on this track or the track 102. It's the same. It doesn't mess with the routing in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't mess anything with the relationships.
What is a good starting program and equipment for beginners? Well, you don't really need equipment if you're just beginning. I never really recommended Fruity Loops for anyone just starting out because good luck leaving Fruity Loops.
And in Ableton Live, it makes a whole lot of a difference if this track right here or right here, because these two have different mixing routing, they have different effects routing, so it's different. In my opinion, this workflow, the track-based workflow, is way better than FL's. It's just more intuitive. It's easier to work with. Everything's so clear. On FL Studio, especially when you're dealing with bigger projects like this one, you are probably going to get a little bit confused because nothing is linked. Playlist tracks are not linked to the mixer tracks. Nothing is linked, so you can get lost. ImageLine added this feature which you can assign a mixer track to an audio track or an instrument track. But this is just mitigating the problem, right? Or the problem in my eyes. It really bums me out because I don't know nothing about developing software, but I imagine that this way of working is probably so deep coded into the program that I don't see them changing it anytime soon. Another thing that I love about Ableton Live is the browser. It's so simple, but it's so effective. On the Ableton Live browser, you have these collections, which are basically tags that you can tag anything. So I have my favorite tags, which are my favorite effects, my drums tags, which are my favorite drums, which I need to get more sounds in here. One shots, my favorite one shot sounds. VST, my favorite VST plugins, and utilities, my favorite utility plugins. Also on the browser, you can do stuff like I have my project files folder here. I can drag and drop tracks from any project into any other project. So let's say I'm working on this and I use this bass sound that I used on this project right here, and I want to bring that bass into my new project. I can just bring my bass and just drag and drop it, and it's here. The MIDI clip is here, and this is also because of the track-based workflow. It brings my whole track, so my MIDI information, my sampler, the one shot that I use, and also the effects. I just didn't have any effects in here, and it's just so useful to do this. I do this all the time. Another thing that I love about Ableton's browser is, let's say we're looping this section of this project, and I want to find a drum loop to go on top of this. And the program is doing it on the fly. It's analyzing every single sample, seeing if it's a one shot or a loop, and it's already looping it to the BPM of the project. On the FL side, there's nothing like that really, and I really miss that. I use a lot of percussion loops, hat loops, and I need to always drag it over, double click, and time it into the project so I can hear how it sounds. On Ableton, it's literally a second, and it just does it. Look, I'm giving Ableton a lot of praise, but there's a ton of stuff that I also love about FL Studio. The first thing, everyone knows this, the piano roll. FL Studio's piano roll is just unbeatable. It's not only better than Ableton piano roll, it's better than any other program. It's better than Cubase or Logic. It's the best one by far. It's so easy to click notes in. It's so easy to compose with just your mouse. And this is why a lot of these like crazy composer guys that you see on TikTok and Instagram, they all use FL Studio. It's so smooth. There's so many tools. The stamp tool is insane. I use this all the time. And drawing meeting here is great. No other DAW comes close to this. Live 12 recently added a bunch of transform tools. The thing that I like the most is that it's on the fly. So let's say I want to do an arpeggiator. I can mess with this and it on the fly changes the MIDI data in front of me. And that's really useful. But it's still the FL Studio miles ahead. Another great thing about FL Studio is the channel rack. I personally don't use it, but I know that a lot of people solely use the channel rack to program drums. I think it's lacking a little bit of stuff. For example, I cannot do triplets in here. Working with larger loops doesn't really work properly because you can only stretch it as long as your monitor goes, so you cannot make like 16 bar loops. But again, it's great. A lot of people use the channel rack to program their drums. On Ableton, we have the drum rack, which is pretty damn good, I'm gonna say, but I can see why FL's channel rack is better. On the drum rack, they only give you this option. You cannot go into it. So let's say I have a hi-hat sounding here. I cannot change the pitch, for example. I need to use separate MIDI clip, which is fine. That's how I usually do it. Comparing the drum rack to the channel rack on FL Studio, the channel rack is probably better. Another thing that I love about FL Studio are the stock plugins. Look, I'm not gonna get into the conversation which set of stock plugins are the best, FL Studios or Ableton's, but FL has some staples as stock plugins. What do I mean by that? I think the biggest example is Gross Beat. Gross Beat shaped the sound. That hip hop and trap era from like 2018 to 2021, that was right when I started to make beats, was all Gross Beat halftime. Everyone was using that.
It's this thing on FL called Gross Beat, which all the fans know we use, but I took it and I half-timed it.
It sounded a little fast, so I just threw the gross speed on it, the half speed.
Type stuff, and then I just half speeded it, so then it came on like this. Gross beated it is what we call it. To producers that's watching, they know what that is.
And then I added this gross beat. Every Fruit Loops dude, everyone who uses gross beat knows about the half speeding thing.
After I found the sound, I then put gross beat on it. The gross beat just adds the to it.
Thing right here shaped the sounds of how hip hop got popular and got into the place that it is today. At that time, everything was In Memoriam Bells on Omnisphere and Halftime on Gross Beat. And I feel like FL has some staples like these. I love Pentametric EQ2. In my opinion, it's way better than Ableton's EQ8. The fact that you can, make it as big as you want. Fruity Flangus has a crazy sound too. Fruity Slicer is another one of those plugins that shape the sounds. The attack on the slicer is its own sound. FL has so many of these, and they also always add new stock plugins. Recently released the Vintage Phaser, Vintage Chorus. They have their own pitch shifter, like their own alternative to Little Ultra Boy. Like FL has so many good stock plugins. If I would pick a set of stock plugins, it would probably be FL Studios. Another thing I love about FL Studio is the looks. I love how this program looks, man. And look, some people might take that seriously or not, how their program looks. I spend not even hundreds, like thousands of hours looking at these programs. I want this shit to look good. FL Studio recently also added themes. So I have my own custom things that I made for myself. I have some for my boy Diego. I see people using this crazy like white ones still. Like it just looks good. If you're picking it up like let's say late at night, you can pull up this really dark theme and it's not gonna hurt your eyes. It's gonna look nice, you know what I'm saying? I think that Ableton looks fine. Like it's not bad or whatever. I think it's kind of cute, but it's not FL Studio. FL has so many good animations. It looks really good. Another thing that ImageLine does with this program is add a bunch of quality of life improvements. FL has some features that are just so obvious. I don't see why other companies do not add them. Stems extraction right in the program. Why doesn't Ableton does this? It makes a lot of sense. People sample a lot of stuff. People are always like trying to extract stems. Nowadays, AI stems extraction is one of the most ethical AI uses I can think of that actually helps artists, and it's built right into the software. Why doesn't other companies do that? You can also see how much time you spend on a project. That's good. Another thing is multiple arrangements. I make samples and beats. Sometimes I have like 3 different arrangements for the same project. I have a sample arrangement, which is only the melodies, a beat arrangement, which is the melodies plus the drums, and also like a TikTok and Reels arrangement. And nowadays TikTok and Instagram Reels are really real thing, and I change up the arrangement of my samples and beats so they fit better on those apps. On Ableton Live, I need to create multiple projects. On this one, I have this project, the Reels project right here, the sample project right here, and the main project. On FL Studio, I can do it inside of one project, just cloning the different arrangements. Okay, so with all of this said, which one should you go with? Look, this is not as simple of an answer. It's a little bit more nuanced, and I need to show you why. Like, just come with me. Look, these programs, they do not exist in a vacuum. We cannot just compare them without taking some other aspects into consideration. And one of the most important aspects is pricing. And on this front, FL just takes a huge victory. FL Studio is way cheaper than Ableton Live, and we have to take that into consideration when we are comparing these two DAWs. And one thing that takes this battle, which FL was already winning, to a completely different level is this. FL Studio updates are free for life. This makes FL Studio a no-brainer. I would say even if you don't use FL Studio, even if you use Logic or Cubase or Pro Tools or Ableton or whatever, and you don't intend to switch to FL, I still think that it's worth it for you to buy it. Why? FL Studio is still the most popular beat-making software on the planet. Everyone uses FL. If you collaborate with people, the odds are that you're gonna get sent an FLP at some point. It's good to know the software, at least your way around it, the most important shortcuts, because it's that popular. And when you take the price that it costs and the amount of time that you have the software, it's almost free. Like the version that I have is the signature bundle. This is my FL Studio version. I'm gonna be honest, I do not face any of the limitations when I'm using FL Studio. I know the All Plugins edition has all of the plugins, but I actually have to go into the website to look up the effects and the VSTs that I didn't have, because it just has that much stuff on it. It's almost no limitation, and I don't intend to upgrade because there's no reason to do that. My version costs $300. We're talking about lifetime licenses. You're gonna have this program forever and all of its updates. FL Studio is almost like a platform. You're buying into it, and it's only getting better. ImageLine as a company, they're doing a great thing. I started on FL Studio version 12, and at that time in 2018, the community was really split. A lot of people were still using FL11 or still FL10. ImageLine heard the community, and on the next major version, version 20, they brought back a lot of stuff, like the legacy effects on the sampler that everyone wanted.
We've also restored the classic pre-computed effects, including boost with clipping, so you can make a distorted 808 bass straight from the sampler channel.
And now with FL version 21, everyone is on it. There's no reason for you to not be on it. They've only been improving the software and making it better every year. The devs at ImageLine, they're always in the forums, and it seems like differently than other companies do, where it looks like they develop the product and you need to kind of learn it to use it. FL Studio is being built around the necessities of their users. Of all of these companies, Ableton, ImageLine, Apple with Logic, Steinberg with Cubase, I love ImageLine the most. They've been doing a great job. If you're using FL Studio pirated, just buy that shit, bro. Costs you $300 and you own it forever for the rest of your life. You're not gonna have another headache with having to crack this program. Just buy that shit. For Ableton Live, that's a whole different conversation. Live is much more expensive. It costs $750, the suite version, and I'm going to tell you, if you make music more than a couple times a week, you want the suite version. At first I bought the standard version, and it lacks so many devices and effects that it made me resell my license and get into suite, and it's gonna cost you, especially if you live in Brazil like I do. There's no regional pricing. On top of these $750, I'm paying all of the credit card taxes, which are heavy because it's an international purchase. It's gonna cost me up to $800, $810. So it's a lot. It's actually an investment that you need to, think about, especially when you're beginning. At this point, I know I'm gonna be spending a lot of money on the software, but I use this shit every day. Like, I make a lot of money with the software, so it's only fair, but it's gonna cost you, bro. And another thing, every 3 to 4 years, there's a new major version, and that comes with a $150, $200 upgrade price. So we're looking at almost $800 for you to get the program, and every 3 to 4 years, another $200 to update to the new version. And this dynamic, and I'm not saying that Ableton does this maliciously, but this dynamic creates a necessity for Ableton as a company to hold on to updates and deliver everything on the new major version so people buy into it. Again, I'm not saying that Ableton does this maliciously, but it's a dynamic that exists. And by the way, just as a side note, and this is just my opinion and it's not information, I can see Image Line switching from this limited free updates scheme that they have to one close to the Ableton one. Image Line is a private company, and private companies operate over a profit over profit logic. And now that they're really popular, that might happen, but at some point I can see them hitting a ceiling, having to make their customers, keep buying their products. I think that's why they're releasing FL Cloud, which is their cloud subscription, like Splice kind of thing, so people can, keep spending money on them. So I wouldn't be surprised if at some point they stop selling lifetime free updates. I've seen companies like Filmora do it, where they sold lifetime licenses and they don't do it anymore. Again, and I'm gonna make this clear, this is my opinion, this is not information at all. So in that front, FL Studio takes a huge W over Ableton. At the end of the day, picking a DAW is a pretty personal thing. What I would say is try it. Both Ableton and FL, they give you trial versions. Try it, see if you like it, if you don't like it, and keep using the one that you like the most. For now, I'm probably gonna be sticking with Ableton, but if in a month or two you see me back on FL Studio, don't be surprised. I don't think I'm gonna stop switching between them anytime soon. This is my struggle with picking a DAW. Please talk with me, leave a comment. I love to open a discussion. I see every comment, I reply to every comment. Leave a comment, like this video, and subscribe, and I'll see you soon on the next one. Peace. Bye.